My name is Claire Bennett. I was 34 years old when I lost my father. William Bennett was the founder of one of Boston's most successful construction companies. He had grown up with almost nothing, but over 40 years, he built a business empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. To the rest of the world, he was a powerful businessman. To me, he was simply Dad. He was the man who taught me how to ride a bicycle, the man who never missed one of my school performances, the man who sat beside me at night when I cried after my mother died. During the final 2 years of his life, Dad became seriously ill. Doctors said his heart was failing. I left my architectural job in New York and returned to Boston to care for him. I drove him to medical appointments, organized his medication, and spent countless nights sitting beside his bed. My older brother, Michael, remained in Los Angeles. He rarely visited, but he never forgot to collect the money he received from the family company. My younger sister, Sophie, was living in Paris, trying to establish herself as a fashion designer. She loved Dad, but she came home only a few times a year. Then there was our stepmother, Victoria. She had been married to Dad for 10 years. She was 20 years younger than him, always perfectly dressed and outwardly polite. She smiled when people were watching and spoke in a soft, comforting voice. But I had always felt that every word she said was calculated. On the morning my father died, I was holding his hand. His breathing was weak and uneven. He opened his eyes and whispered, "Claire, don't trust what people say. Trust what they do." "Dad, please don't talk," I said. "You need to rest." He slowly shook his head. "When the will is read, don't be afraid." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but before I could speak, he closed his eyes. At 4 o'clock that morning, my father was gone. 3 days after the funeral, the family gathered in the library of the Bennett estate. The room smelled of old books, polished wood, and the faint smoke from the fireplace. I sat beside Sophie. Michael stood near the window, checking his watch every few minutes. Victoria sat in Dad's favorite chair, wearing an expensive black dress and holding a handkerchief against her face. She pretended to wipe away tears, but her eyes were completely dry. Across from us sat Dad's longtime friend and attorney, Jonathan Hale. A thick brown leather folder rested on the desk in front of him. Michael sighed impatiently. "Can we get this over with? Some of us have lives to return to." Sophie looked at him in disbelief. "We buried our father 3 days ago." Michael shrugged. "Life doesn't stop because someone dies." I stared at him, but I said nothing. Jonathan placed both hands on the leather folder. 6 months ago, William rewrote his final will and testament. Michael immediately straightened in his chair. "He changed it?" "Yes." Victoria's expression shifted. "He never told me." Jonathan looked at her calmly. He specifically requested that no one be informed until after his death. A heavy silence settled over the room. Jonathan opened the folder. "I will begin with William's personal property." Dad's classic cars were to be auctioned, with the proceeds donated to charity. His art collection would go to a museum in Boston. My mother's jewelry would be divided equally between Sophie and me. Michael grew more restless with every sentence. "When are you going to talk about the company?" Jonathan adjusted his glasses. "Now!" The room became completely silent. Bennett Construction Group is currently valued at approximately $240 million, Jonathan said. William did not choose to divide the company equally among his children. Michael slowly stood. "What does that mean?" "It means you should sit down and allow me to finish." Michael's jaw tightened, but he returned to his chair. Jonathan continued reading. "Regarding the 51% controlling interest in Bennett Construction Group." Michael held his breath. Victoria's fingers tightened around her handkerchief. Jonathan looked down at the document. "I leave no controlling interest to my eldest son, Michael Bennett." Michael's face went red. "I also leave no controlling interest to my wife, Victoria Bennett." Victoria went pale. Jonathan turned to the next line. "I leave the 51% controlling interest in Bennett Construction Group to my daughter, Claire Bennett." No one moved, no one spoke. I could hear the ticking of the old clock across the room. Michael stared at me as though I had betrayed him. Victoria's face had become completely white. Sophie covered her mouth with one hand, and I remained frozen in my chair. I wasn't excited, I wasn't thinking about the money. I could only hear my father's final warning. When the will is read, don't be afraid. Michael finally broke the silence. This is impossible. Jonathan didn't close the folder. Instead, he looked directly at me. This is only the beginning, Claire. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? Your father left you something else along with control of the company. Jonathan reached beneath the desk and lifted a small black box. He instructed me to open this only after the controlling shares had been announced. He placed the box in front of me. Inside was a silver key and a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in my father's handwriting. Beneath it was one sentence. If you want to know the truth, trust no one. Michael paced angrily across the library. I'm his eldest son. I worked for that company for 15 years. I looked at him. You haven't worked a full week there in 5 years. That's none of your business. It became my business the moment Dad gave me control of the company. Victoria rose and walked toward Jonathan. William was seriously ill. He may not have been mentally capable of making such a decision. Jonathan remained calm. 3 independent doctors evaluated him on the day he signed the will. Each confirmed that he was mentally competent. Victoria said nothing. Sophie reached for my hand. Claire, did you know about this? No. That was the truth. I had never planned to run Bennett Construction Group. I was an architect who specialized in restoring historic buildings. My life was in New York. Dad respected my career, but he had never suggested that he intended to leave his company to me. Jonathan continued reading. Michael had been left a trust worth $10 million. However, there were conditions. He would not receive the money immediately. To gain access to the trust, Michael had to avoid legal trouble for 3 years and agree not to challenge the will or sue the company. Sophie received $5 million to develop her fashion business, along with the Bennett family beach house. Victoria was left a luxury apartment in Manhattan and an annual trust payment worth $2 million. It was more money than most people would ever see in a lifetime. But judging by Victoria's expression, it was not enough. Jonathan lifted the final page. William placed the remaining 49% of Bennett Construction Group into a private trust. Michael laughed bitterly. What trust? Jonathan paused. The Emma Grace Trust. I had never heard that name before. Sophie looked equally confused, but Victoria suddenly dropped the glass she had been holding. It shattered across the wooden floor. Everyone turned toward her. Jonathan watched her carefully. Do you recognize that name, Victoria? No, she answered too quickly. Her voice trembled. Michael stepped closer to her. Who is Emma Grace? Victoria didn't respond. Jonathan removed another document. The sole beneficiary of the trust is 19-year-old Emma Grace Miller. My heart began pounding. Who is she? I asked. Jonathan looked directly at me. According to the legal and medical documents provided by your father, Emma Grace Miller is William Bennett's biological daughter. Sophie gasped. Michael slammed his fist against the table. Our father had another daughter. My mind began racing. Had Dad betrayed my mother? Had he lived a secret life? Why had he never told us? Victoria suddenly turned toward the door. Jonathan stopped her. You should remain here, Victoria. You are connected to this matter. I am not a prisoner. Not yet. His words sent a chill through the room. Michael stepped toward him. What exactly are you accusing her of? Jonathan placed an old photograph on the desk. It showed a young woman holding a baby. Dad stood beside her, but he wasn't smiling. He was staring beyond the camera with fear in his eyes. Written on the back were the words, Emma, 2005. The truth will come out one day. Sophie began crying. How could Dad hide something like this from us? Jonathan shook his head. This is not what you think. Then explain it, Michael demanded. Emma's mother was not your father's mistress. I held my breath. Then who was she? Jonathan turned toward Victoria. Her name was Rebecca Miller. Victoria's expression hardened. She was Victoria's younger sister. No one spoke. Jonathan continued. Rebecca died in a car accident 19 years ago. Michael looked at Victoria in shock. Dad had a child with your sister. It's a lie, Victoria shouted. Jonathan calmly placed a digital recorder on the desk. William recorded a statement before his death. He pressed play. Dad's weak but unmistakable voice filled the library. If this recording is being played, then I was unable to reveal the truth myself. I closed my eyes. Rebecca was not my lover, Dad continued, and she was not Emma's biological mother. Jonathan paused the recording. Michael stared at him. Then who gave birth to Emma? Jonathan looked at me. The answer is connected to the silver key your father left Claire. I lowered my eyes to the key in my hand. Dad had not left us a single secret. He had left us an entire life built upon lies. The silver key belonged to a private safe deposit box inside an old Boston bank. Jonathan and I went there the following morning. Michael demanded to come with us, but Dad's instructions were clear. Only I was authorized to open the box. Inside, there was no cash, no gold, no jewelry, only 3 things. Emma Grace's birth certificate, a folder of medical records, and a long handwritten letter addressed to me. I opened it carefully. My dearest Claire, by the time you read this, I will be gone. I know you may hate me for hiding the truth, but revealing it too soon could have placed Emma's life in danger. My hands began to tremble. 19 years ago, our company entered a serious financial crisis. At that time, Michael was working in the accounting department. He abused the family's trust and secretly diverted money from several construction projects. I stopped reading. Michael had been only 23. He had stolen from our father's company. The letter continued. When I discovered what Michael had done, I planned to report him to the police. Victoria stopped me. She admitted that she had helped him conceal the missing money. I felt sick. Victoria used her younger sister, Rebecca, to hide the financial records. Rebecca worked as an accountant and eventually discovered every false transaction. She planned to go to the authorities. The next lines were harder to read. On the night Rebecca died, she called me. She said she had gathered proof of what Victoria and Michael had done. She asked to meet me, but she never arrived. Rebecca's death had been ruled an accident. Dad had never believed it. After Rebecca died, 6-month-old Emma was found in her home. Everyone believed Rebecca was her mother, but the medical records proved that another woman had given birth to her. I turned the page. The final paragraph began with a sentence that changed my entire life. Emma's biological mother was your mother, Margaret. The letter slipped from my fingers. My mother? My mother had given birth to Emma? It seemed impossible. Emma had been born during the final year of my mother's life, when she spent months in hospitals battling cancer. Jonathan gave me time to breathe. Eventually, I picked up the letter again. While your mother was receiving cancer treatment, doctors discovered she was pregnant. She chose to continue the pregnancy despite the risks. Emma was born prematurely. Margaret died shortly afterward. Tears fell onto the paper. We had never been told the full truth about my mother's death. I wanted to bring Emma home. Victoria refused. She warned that accepting the child into our family would expose Michael's crimes and Rebecca's knowledge of the stolen money. Rebecca agreed to raise Emma as her own until I could find a safe solution. After Rebecca died, Dad feared Emma could become the next target, so he secretly arranged for another family to raise her. He paid for her home, education, medical expenses, and every other need from a distance. But he never told Emma he was her father. The final section was addressed directly to me. Claire, I chose you to lead the company because you are the only one who has never placed money above family. Find Emma. Tell her the truth. 49% of the company belongs to her. But be careful. Victoria and Michael committed crimes once to protect their secrets. They may do it again. When I left the bank, I was no longer the same person. Dad's inheritance was not simply wealth. It was a responsibility. I had to find my lost sister, protect my mother's youngest daughter, and expose the criminals who had been hiding inside our family. That evening, Jonathan found Emma's address. She worked in a small bookstore in Vermont. We planned to leave the following morning, but shortly after midnight, I received a message from an unknown number. Do not look for Emma. Otherwise, you will share your mother's fate. Attached to the message was a photograph of Emma taken earlier that day. Someone was already watching her. I was terrified, but I refused to stop. Jonathan contacted the police, and investigators began tracing the threatening message. We did not have time to wait. Someone might reach Emma before we did. The next morning, we drove to Vermont. The bookstore where Emma worked was small and warm, with old novels and flowers displayed in the front window. She stood behind the counter organizing books. The moment I saw her, I lost my breath. She looked exactly like my mother, the same green eyes, the same smile, the same habit of tilting her head slightly when listening. Emma studied us cautiously. "Can I help you?" I struggled to speak. "My name is Claire Bennett." Her expression changed. "William Bennett's daughter?" "Yes. I heard he died." I took a slow breath. "He was your father, too." The bookstore became painfully quiet. Emma laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What kind of joke is this?" Jonathan placed the documents on the counter. "This is not a joke." Emma stared at the birth certificate, medical reports, and Dad's letter. Tears filled her eyes. "Rebecca wasn't my mother?" "She raised you as her daughter," I said. "But our mother, Margaret, gave birth to you." Emma slowly sat down. "William knew I existed. He protected you from a distance your entire life. But he never came." The pain in her voice broke my heart. "He was afraid. For 19 years, I believed my father didn't want me. I knelt in front of her. He made terrible mistakes, but he never forgot you." At that exact moment, the bookstore window shattered. A stone crashed onto the floor. A note was wrapped around it. Jonathan opened it. "Give up the inheritance. This is your final warning." The police moved us to a secure location. But that night, Michael called me. "Claire, you don't understand what you're doing." "Were you involved in Rebecca's death?" He went silent. "I didn't kill her." "But you tried to silence her." "I was young. I was afraid." "You stole from the company." "Dad should have forgiven me." His voice became bitter. "The company was supposed to be mine." "It was not created to protect your crimes." Michael lowered his voice. "Be careful around Victoria." "What do you mean?" "You think she controlled everything because of money?" "She threatened Rebecca." "Yes, but money was never her only motive." Before I could respond, he ended the call. Later that evening, Jonathan uncovered another secret. Over the previous 10 years, $27 million had been transferred from the company into hidden accounts. Victoria had authorized the transfers. But the money did not lead to Michael. It had been placed under another name, Sophie Bennett. I stared at the documents in disbelief. Sophie had cried beside me, supported me, pretended to be shocked by every revelation. I called her immediately. "Claire, I can explain." "Were you working with Victoria?" Sophie began crying. "She has controlled me since I was 18. She showed me documents about Mom's treatment." "What documents?" "She claimed that Victoria, not Dad, had secretly paid for Mom's medical care. She threatened to release evidence suggesting Dad had deliberately refused treatment unless I helped her. Victoria had manipulated every member of our family with different lies." "Where is the money?" "It's in accounts under my name, but I can't access them. Victoria controls the passwords." "What do you know about Rebecca's death?" Sophie remained silent for several seconds. "I saw Victoria that night." "Where?" "In the garage. The front of her car was damaged. The next morning, Rebecca was dead." It was not enough to prove murder, but Sophie had something else. Years earlier, she had discovered an old voice recorder in Victoria's room. The recording captured Victoria arguing with Michael. Victoria's voice was unmistakable. "Rebecca planned to go to the police. I stopped her. You will never speak about this again." Michael responded, "Did you kill her?" Victoria answered, "I protected this family." The recording changed everything, but when the police arrived to arrest Victoria, she was gone, and so was Emma. The safe house where Emma had been staying was empty. A window had been left open. A cup of tea lay shattered on the floor. Her scarf had been torn. She had been taken by force. Police issued a statewide alert. An hour later, Victoria called me. "Emma is alive. Don't hurt her. Transfer your 51% of the company to me. Emma will sign away her shares. The documents will be completed tonight. And if I refuse, Victoria laughed softly. Then the Bennett family will lose another daughter. She ordered me to come to Dad's old lake house. The police warned me not to go, but I had no choice. Jonathan placed a hidden microphone beneath my clothing. Officers surrounded the property from a distance. I entered the house, alone. Emma was tied to a chair. A man with a gun stood beside her. Victoria sat near the fireplace, drinking wine. "Your father always believed you were weak," she said. "No, he knew exactly what you were." Victoria placed legal documents on the table. "Sign." I picked up the pen. "Release Emma first." "After you sign." I looked directly into her eyes. "Did you kill Rebecca?" She smiled. "Does it matter now?" "I want to hear you say it." Victoria took a sip of wine. "Rebecca knew too much. She believed she was brave. She threatened to go to the police and destroy everything. So you forced her car off the road. She was driving too fast. Were you also responsible for my mother's death?" For the first time, Victoria's expression changed. "Your mother was already sick. Her doctor said she was improving. If she survived, William would never have married me." My blood turned cold. "What did you do?" Victoria leaned closer. "I changed her medication." Emma began crying. I placed the pen on the table. "You just confessed." Victoria noticed the hidden microphone. Her face twisted with anger. "Clever girl." She turned to the armed man. "Kill them." Before he could move, the back door opened. Michael entered, holding a gun. "That's enough, Victoria." His weapon was pointed at her. Victoria laughed. "You're nothing without me." "Maybe, but I'm done committing crimes for you." The guard lunged toward Michael. A gunshot exploded through the room. Windows shattered as police officers stormed the house. Within seconds, it was over. Victoria was forced to the floor and handcuffed. Emma was freed. Michael had been shot, but he survived. Later, he confessed to his financial crimes and cooperated with investigators. Victoria was convicted of murdering Rebecca, contributing to my mother's death, kidnapping Emma, embezzling company money, and attempting to have us killed. She received life in prison without parole. Michael was sentenced to 10 years. Sophie received probation because she had never accessed the stolen money and had provided the recording that helped solve the case. But the greatest surprise came after the trial. Jonathan gathered Sophie, Emma, and me in Dad's library once again. He placed a sealed page from the will on the desk. William instructed me to read this section only after the truth had been fully revealed. He began reading. "If Claire finds Emma and accepts her not as a rival for the inheritance, but as her sister, then Claire will not retain the entire controlling interest." I stared at him. "What?" Jonathan smiled slightly. "All shares of Bennett Construction Group will be divided equally between Claire and Emma. However, at least 20% of the company's annual profits must be placed into a foundation supporting employees' families, education, and medical care." Emma looked at me nervously. "I don't know how to run a company like this." I took her hand. "Neither do I." She gave me a faint smile. "But we can learn together." Jonathan read the final line of Dad's will. "I did not want my children merely to become wealthy. I wanted them to become better people than I was." The room fell silent again. But this silence was different. It was not created by fear, greed, or shock. It came from finally understanding the weight of the truth. 1 year later, Emma enrolled at a university to study business and social development. Sophie returned from Paris and created a free fashion design program through the company's charitable foundation. I became the chief executive of Bennett Construction Group. Together, Emma and I established a foundation in our father's name to support women and children affected by violence and financial crime. One afternoon, Emma and I sat beside the lake house, watching the sunlight move across the water. "Have you forgiven Dad?" she asked. I thought for a long time. "It's difficult to forgive all the lies," I said. "But in the end, he chose to reveal the truth." Emma rested her head on my shoulder. "My entire life, I believed I didn't have a family." "You do now." The final golden light reflected across the lake. My father's will had not simply left us wealth. It exposed secrets that had been buried for years. It brought criminals to justice. It reunited two sisters who had never known each other. And it taught us that the greatest inheritance was never the company, the houses, or the millions of dollars. The greatest inheritance was the courage to face the truth and the strength to choose justice, even when it came too late.